Tony, I've been looking forward to talking to you for a long time now. As you know, a big fan of what you're doing, the sort of work you're putting out there. I thought that the best place to start would be that you go on Instagram by the name of The Natural Lifestylist.
Indeed.
What is a natural lifestyle?
For me, it's about rewilding behaviours. So under the guise of The Natural Lifestylist, I've managed to get into, coaching from students through to millionaires and billionaires, encouraging them to find more natural ways of living in urban environments. We have ways that we can move, sleep, rest, play, eat, digest, with our social tribe as well, community, friends, family, and then even in a spiritual context. There's natural ways of doing things, or there's social norms of today, right? So biological norms or social norms, which is a process of rewilding for me. So rewilding to me kind of means that I look to the natural beings and natural places of the world to find ways of living that are more in sync with our human biology, So it's stuff that we lose sight of, and we have concerns for the environment of today, right? Sustainability. And there's a shocking fact of 60% of the wildlife has been removed since, 1970s. That's half an adult life. But we're failing to understand that the wild humans also are being removed from the planet. And for me, it's a terrifying thing because we have Peter Kahn's term of environmental generational amnesia. So every generation that's born, they're born into a new social norm. And if we remove more and more of wildlife and more of wild humans and more of wild nature, unfortunately, we just see the compromised world of today.
And you were on the train just now. You obviously live in London.
Yeah, I'm an urbanite, right?
Yeah, so when you look around, are you able to tell when you look at people around that actually you're not a wild human, you're a modern human, and is that problematic?
I used to work with a company called Wild Fitness, right? And their thing is turning zoo humans into wild humans, right? And it's an insult calling people zoo humans that, you're just born into a social norm. I'm not a wild human, I'm still an urbanite. But I recognise ways of living that are going to enable me to thrive in a city rather than survive in the city. Does that make sense? I observe people and I might look at their posture and I might look, but really there's no judgment there for me anymore. I've kind of worked through that. I used to get frustrated with urban life, and I realised that there's another rung on the ladder of consciousness to get to a point where you say, I have compassion or empathy, rather than, look at these people walking around, look at the state of society, look at this. I don't have that anymore. It's more, look, I get it. They're operating at a certain level, so I kind of pull back a bit, and rather than judging the situation, just let's try and find ways that are going to help support people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think you're sort of touching on personal growth there, aren't you? And the more
absolutely,
the more we go down that road, and I know I've spoken about this on this podcast many times before, but the more you go down that route, the more you understand yourself, the more you can change those behaviors, and actually the less judgmental you become. And when you start to learn and retrain that part of your mind, it's just a more chilled out way of living and being, right? So you're not looking at people anymore and going, God, I wish I could sort their posture out. You're saying, hey, of course they're going to be like that. That's a result of the environment in which they're living. And that must have been quite a refreshing perspective for you to take, I'm guessing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I guess it's been a really refreshing take for my family and the people around me, because my parents would say to Katerina, what's wrong? Why does Tony have to be so extreme in what he's doing? She said, well, he's not being extreme. He's just found a way of living. And if he wasn't to live it, you'd have to question his integrity in what he's doing, But again, just being. So rather than it be my ego that says, oh, this is a really great position to be in, aren't I this? It's just, again, it's this understanding, I guess, the closer you can get to having your physical, social, spiritual needs met, the closer you are to being more human. For me, it's always just been about being my own guinea pig in a way. So being the example. So rather than even preaching or telling people this is what you should be doing, it was to be an example, because I had gone down the path of, I had all the knowledge, I had all the research, and I was in a gym that I owned in West Hampstead. And it was a boxing club, 1950s boxing club, but we had a natural lifestyle philosophy behind it, working with Wild Fitness. And so these personal trainers are coming to see me, and they're all standing in the gym space, and I'm standing in the boxing ring, of great places to be holding a presentation from. And I'm preaching. I'm saying these are the ways that we should be living. This is a natural lifestyle, how we sleep, eat, play, move, everything else, right? Social and spiritual needs. If you don't have those needs, you're a human in suffering. And yet, there I wasn't sleeping, my food was out because I was still having to use pacifiers for the stress I was in the environment I was in. So I had all this amazing knowledge, I just wasn't living it. And so in that moment of recognition of me talking to the room filled with personal trainers, this tube train just blasted past the doors. It was in an old railway building. And the tube blasted past and it shook the building. And in that moment, I had this, oh my God, like you're a fraud. Here you are, espousing this amazing lifestyle and you're not living it. So that was it for me. That I closed the gym and I went bankrupt and we lost everything in that moment. But it was the best thing that ever happened because it was an opportunity to me to look at myself and my behaviors and then go through the philosophy and heal myself in that process.
Yeah, wow. I mean, it sounds
so it wasn't then about, I wasn't being socially extreme. Again, I was just trying to find ways of living that were more biologically normal, things that were enabling me to thrive. Because previously I was just surviving. And who wants to just survive, right? It's like...
Yeah, there's a few things there that really strike a chord with me. The first one is that you seem to have been on this journey to find the lifestyle that actually resonates with you.
Yeah.
Not for anyone else, not for, Joe across the street, but for Tony Riddle, actually, what is a lifestyle that I want to live that's going to make me feel whole? And that's, I think, quite inspiring for people because no matter what journey, anyone listening to this is on, I think it is about trying to find your own journey, finding out what works for you. You obviously went to, quite an extreme case of actually shutting down, going bankrupt, all that sort of stuff to find what works for you. I think that's something we can all learn from. You said that phrase, a human in suffering.
Yeah.
And that really struck me. So, I'm currently a GP. I've worked in specialist fields before, but I've been seeing patients for almost 20 years now as a doctor. And I've never heard that term, a human being in suffering. But I guess that's what I see day in, day out, walking into my practice as a GP, are people in suffering. Now, I've never thought about it like that, but, whether someone is coming in and they're struggling with their weight or with their mental health, or they've got migraines, or whatever it is they're coming in with, on some level, they are suffering. They're a human being in suffering, hence they're coming to me to provide some insight and some guidance.
To help remove the suffering.
Yeah. And so suffering can mean anything, can't it? It doesn't have to be...
It's just a symptom.
It's just a symptom.
And it's a symptom of the environment and the habitat. And that can be the habits within the habitat, or the learnt habits within the habitat, right? Which goes into epigenetics again, right? The environment, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what are my behaviours in there allowing me to suffer, Yeah. And how do I find ways of healing that? And again, I found that the closer I could take people to nature, the more I can heal them. So I've been privy to some incredible lifestyles, right? I've been flown around by private jet, just incredible stuff. And it doesn't matter where people perceive they are on the monetary slide of success. If their needs aren't met, they're suffering just the same. In fact, some of them are even more unhappy, right? So how does that work out? So then I realised that it almost doesn't matter how much money you have. If you're still suffering, you're still unhappy, right? Okay, so then this old saying of money can't buy you happiness, I'm not. It's not so true. It's just knowing what to spend your money on, not what you may want, but understanding what your needs are. And this could come into imagine an educational model with kids. We have kids, right? Imagine your kids went into a school environment where they were taught what their fundamental needs were to allow them to thrive. Except we have environments that remove their needs, right? We have chairs that they have to sit in for hours. Fundamental need is movement, right? Without movement, we suffer. Then they go to the dinner hall, right? And then they've got food groups that aren't aligned with a biologically normal food group, which means they're going to suffer. Their digestion will suffer. That's 3 more, yeah? What's the air quality? What's the habitat? What's the environment? Is it connected to nature in any way, So even for our kids, and we're caring parents, but we put them into environments that can be for 8 hours a day that aren't enabling them to thrive. It's actually put them in a place of suffering. It's insane. When you view it that way, it's like, oh, wow.
Yeah, and, I'm not detecting even an ounce of judgment in the way you're saying that.
It's just an observation, right?
And I think it's important to say that because I think when we talk about parenting, when we talk about our children going to school, a lot of people can get quite defensive about that because obviously every parent, I think, is trying to do the best that they can for their child based upon what they know, based upon their environment.
That's all you can do.
That's all you can do.
No.
And I want to explore how you have actually gone on that journey to change your environments. But for those people who don't know and have not followed Tony on Instagram or on Facebook or wherever and seen some of the stuff that he does, a lot of people would perceive what you do as biologically extreme. So, for instance, it's my understanding that you don't have any chairs in your house.
Yep.
Right. Now, I love that, and we'll talk about why I love that and how I'm struggling to get that through in my own house. But let's explore that. I think that's a really sort of specific point we can look at now and showcase to people what you're talking about. So, why do you have no chairs in your house?
Just because I want to raise as many socially extreme eyebrows as possible. No. Again, we are a species destined to be innately empowered, wild, and connected, right? And the way that comes around is that we have this amazing physicality, social and spiritual self. And when you understand the physical self, again, one of those fundamental physical needs is movement and play, okay? So I used to own a Pilates studio, and so I thought that was on the rung of the ladder of movement. And most of the people that come and see me, it was really symptom relief. You know, trying to reconfigure a posture that was basically compromised by modern life. And it's the modern part of life, which is a sedentary lifestyle. Now, 83% of the UK are living in urban environments. We're spending 90% of our time indoors. What are we doing in that time indoors? Most of it's sitting, right? So if we're sitting in one posture, and I have a Pilates studio that's designed for symptom relief, why keep dealing with the symptom? Why not go to the cause, which is the chair? And then if I look to nature for the perfect example, because I looked at the natural world and the natural beings of the world for the solution, because again, we can only look to nature for a natural condition, right? So I can do that through sleep, rest, play, whatever it is. In this case, it's, right, look at the chair. Does a chair exist in nature? No. So if we then look at, there's 100 different rest positions on the ground. Once you understand them, you can see that they're little micronutrients of the macro skill of actually standing up.
Right.
Let's say you have kids, right? So we observed our kids. Because I have a movement background, I was just obsessed and recording bit by bit by bit by bit of their movement, which is their motor skill milestones, how they unravel. So they have various different rest positions on the ground that enable them to become upright beings, right? None of that involves a chair, but they manage to get completely upright. They have the best postures ever, right? Up until the age of 6, 7, you don't have to go to physios or Pilates. You just have incredible physiology. And you can jump, run, lift, carry. You can do all these things that we're having to relearn and reconnect with. They already have it. So for me, I had to remove the chair because I had to be the best example for my kids. So if I'm sitting, my kids are going to want to sit. I can't say to them, no, you're not allowed on the chairs. You have to keep unraveling all these 100 different rest positions. So partly was to be the best example of a human being for my kids to observe the behaviors. But mostly it's just every one of those rest positions helps feed and nourish an amazing physiology that then the macro skills can come from walking, from running, through jumping, through lifting, through carrying, through throwing, defending, swimming. All of those things, the hierarchy within them is the posture. And the micronutrient or element of that macro skill of the posture is all the ground rest positions. Unfortunately, when we sit, it's detrimental to the posture because we get locked in the hips, locked in the ankle. We revert back into a very old primal pattern, if you believe in evolution. Like 35 million evolutions, we're a C-shaped primate. So when we sit down, we then start to take on the C-shaped spine of the primate. It's very quick. And then if you start to then put a pad in front of you or a computer in front of you or a screen in front of you, you adopt even more of a C shape, which we call slumping, but really it's just adopting a very ancient spinal position. Then when you stand from that, of course, the head position is totally out. It's forward of the base of support, which means then when I simply walk or I run or any of those things, it means I have to keep striding further and further out because otherwise I'd fall over if the foot wasn't there. So it's just understanding that the ground rest positions, it's nature's cure really for a lot of the ills that I see within people's posture or within their physiology.
Yeah.
So there's joints that primarily should be offering mobility, some that offer stability. The pelvis should be offering stability and the thoracic spine should be offering mobility. When we sit down in a chair, it defies all of that. But when you upload the rest positions on the ground, like simple things like kneeling I'm doing now up on a chair, this is a single leg kneel, but it's the single leg squat just the same.
Yeah.
It nourishes the ankle, stabilizes the knee, immobilizes the hips. And then I can build my posture above it. So it's opening up the locomotive joints and then allowing the muscles and the tendons within that system to understand their role, which then we can become more efficient, minimize the risk of injury, And aesthetics, we just have a system that understands its role. Therefore, I'm going to be physically stronger and look physically stronger and more empowered because my posture's aligned, you know?
Yeah, no, it's incredible. I'm a complete subscriber to your philosophy. People may have seen about a year ago, I posted on Instagram, and you did as well. I had a long session with you where we worked a lot on ankle mobility and some of these squat positions, and I was really good for a few months. I was diligently every morning, starting the day as part of my morning routine with at least 15, 20 minutes of work on my ankles, and it sort of slipped a bit in the last few months. But a few things I really want to touch on. So the squat.
Yeah.
You're a big proponent of the squat. And it is interesting for anyone with kids, if you watch your children squat, they've just got the most beautiful, perfect squat. And
it's fluid, isn't it?
It's fluid. They're not thinking about it.
No.
They're not trying to squat. It's one of those things where what I've learned in, 9 years being a parent now, and again, I'm learning all the time, but I've learned that actually kids seem to do what they see you do, not what you tell them to do.
Oh, yeah, they learn through observation more than anything vocal.
100%. So if, for example, if you're trying to encourage your children to have a healthy diet, I would say to parents, well, the first step is actually to make sure you're having one yourself and your kids can see that, because if you're going to eat something particular that's not healthy and then you're saying, no, you have to eat this way, you may have the best intentions, but I think it's going to be very short-sighted in terms of, what results you get from that. Same with screen time. If you're always on your screen in front of your children and you want them to reduce their screen time, it's going to be very challenging.
Well, you're a hypocrite.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That's underneath it, really.
Underneath it, they're just going to see that and go, no, well, Danny's always on his screen, so I'm going to be always on my screen, sort of thing. And I guess you're taking it further to movement. So here's a problem that I see. So kids are able to squat beautifully, but at some point, and it seems like you're saying it happens after the age of 6, they start to unlearn that pattern, that basic pattern, maybe being in chairs all day at school,
there you go.
Slumped over books, all this kind of stuff. And I remember as a kid, right? So my parents are Indian immigrants. My dad came here in the early 1960s. And every other summer, I used to go with my brother and my parents to India. And we'd spend the summer in Calcutta. And I remember in both the houses I stayed in my mum's house and my dad's house, there was always help in the kitchen. And I remember I can feel this vivid imprint in my head of one of the helpers in her sari just literally squatting all day cutting vegetables. Not having to move out of position, just literally squatting next to this sort of big curved knife and just cutting veg all day, because it's a natural resting position. Whereas if I try to do that, and I have tried to do that in my kitchen, I get to about 5-6 minutes and I'm really feeling it.
Yeah.
And so if a parent listening to this goes, okay, that's great, right? I want to model this behavior for my children. Here's the problem. So many of us, like myself, have forgotten, our bodies have unlearnt how to do a squat. So we actually are unable to do a squat properly. So we can't model that right behavior. So what should we do then?
Yeah, again, going back to, we have forgotten, it goes back into Peter Kahn, it's like this environmental generational amnesia. And it's about templates, right? So you're lucky enough, if you've had a template, you've at least seen someone squatting. I see people that actually have no template for what a squat might look like in the first place, So it's stripping it right back to that. What can they do? Well, to start with, just simply trying to squat with your heel up is the first example. You can hold the edge of a table, just keep your chest up and then just squat slowly down, so you allow the heel to come up, because most of it is that we're locked in the ankle. Believe it or not, it's that joint really that's being compromised. And then the next stage would be a thick book. Put a book underneath your heel and then squat down. So rather than having your heel off the ground, you then put a support behind it. And then over time, you minimize it and minimize it and minimize it until it ends up at ground level. Because ultimately, you want to get to the point where your squat actually feels like a rest position, not an exercise.
Yeah.
We see squatting as an exercise, and the way exercise physiology and bodybuilding messed up the resting squat, because people were told you shouldn't squat with your knees beyond your knees beyond your toes, and you shouldn't let your hips drop in it any lower than your knees. Well, how is it that in natural cultures and beings of the world, they've already destroyed of injuries? None of us would be here today, right? Because we'd all be injured, right?
Yeah.
So once you have to have first of all a template, I guess, to understand what a squat looks like. So research flat-footed squatting or squatting naturally or natural cultures squatting or something. Get a template, get an image of what it looks like first, and then that's what. Otherwise, you're subconsciously incompetent. You're not going to understand what it is you're trying to achieve in the first place. and then just put little supports in, one behind your heel. If you're still struggling, use an anterior support, like a door handle. Make sure the door's closed, or a banister rail, or a chair, the back of a chair, or something that will enable you not to fall backwards.
Yeah.
And then allow the heel to pop up, and then play around with lowering the heel. And you can do that by holding something and lowering the heel back, or by popping a support behind it.
But you have taught many people, myself included, some of these techniques. And I think do you have an online program?
Yeah, I have there's an online squat tutorial there. I'll give you a link to that for your listeners.
I'll put it in the show notes.
I'll put a little discount code up for them as well. How's that? And that's a 6-week tutorial, and it's only the 6th week is actually about squatting. The rest of it is about the rest of the ground rest positions, all the resting positions, because they're the micro elements of the macro skill of squatting, because you have to get to squatting before you stand. So all the other rest positions are about nurturing the squat position to get you up onto your feet with the correct joint actions and the right posture to be able to stand up. So there's week by week, there's little uploads within that. So some are about the posture, some are about the mobility for the ankles and stability for the knees.
On one level, could this be one of the reasons why so many people get injured when, let's say, they're sat down all day at work in an office. They're sat down, let's say, on the sofa in the evening. They sit maybe in the car or the tube or a bus or a train on their way to work. So day in, day out for 7, 8, 9 hours a day, their natural movement capacity is being compromised.
Yeah.
And then they get, let's say they listen to a podcast that I might do with a runner. I think, I'm going to do it. I'm going to start running in nature. It's going to be incredible for me. And they start doing it at the weekends, and they do it for a few weeks, and then they start to get injured. And I see this a lot. And so I guess the point I'm trying to make is, if we have altered movement biomechanics as a result of the environments in which we are putting ourselves in day out, that can actually hinder our ability to do a lot more of those exciting activities that we might get inspiration about, and then we can't do it. Is that something you think is reasonable?
Yeah, so again, let's talk about running, for instance, right? So the best runners in the world, let's look at tribes people or the Tarahumara, right, who feature in Born to Run. They can whack out 400 miles in 48 hours, right? Which is like, what? It just seems so extreme, but actually it's biologically normal, and it's a social norm to them. They're not a sitting culture, right? And they don't wear footwear, or they wear little minimized sandals that they've built. So that the micro element of their macro skill of running hasn't been altered. So they haven't compromised the very posture that is needed for running. And if you don't have the appropriate posture, then you don't have the appropriate patterns that come with it, which is biomechanics again. So it's kinetics versus kinematics. Kinetics is the study of the forces within running, and then kinematics are the shapes I make due to the forces. And then a byproduct of that is the muscles and tendons that I will be using. So in theory, if you don't have a good ground rest position, ground resting game on that's strong and up into a squat and can't squat to stand, I tend to say to people, I would cut back on mileage and start to address those things first, because running is the macro skill. You need to address the micro elements of the running skill. And many people say, we just run naturally. Well, that's not true, because 70% of runners are giving up through injury. That's the American College of Sports Medicine. And so 70% of runners are getting injured. We have to question that, because if we look at Dan Lieberman's work, right, we know that we are literally born to run. It's what shaped our physiology, because that's what shaped the sapiens, and everything around the way that the knee operates, the pelvis, the pelvic stability, your core stability, the head shape, the neck position. Otherwise, we would be a bigger brain, stronger physiology sitting here. We'd be Neanderthals. But we're sapiens sitting here. We're an urbanite species of a sapien. And so if that's the physiology that shaped us, what is it that shaped the amazing running arboreal animal that the sapien was? That we've traversed the most incredible terrain and hostile environments to get us here today. What's beneath that? And beneath that is the ground positions, the squatting. So those guys aren't getting injured. They can't afford to get injured, because it would, if going by that stat, like 70% going up with injury, that's like saying only 30% of us would be here today.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, that's powerful. It's like, well, what is it that they're doing differently? That's why I always go to nature as the filter. And going by ground rest position, it's not just about the physiology. You have to understand that even if you go like 5,000, 10,000 years ago to yoga and Ayurvedic traditions, they were building postures for what? They were building it to be able to hold the posture within meditation deeper and deeper, so you could go beyond that. So that has a spiritual context to the shape. So if we build a really strong ground practice, it means that we can rest in position. So there's not just a physical experiment there. Socially, there's an experience because it's demonstrating the appropriate behavior, but also spiritually, you get much more connected and in your body. And it means if you go into deep meditation or you go into, I don't know, ceremonies or something like that, it means you have a strong vessel, a physiology that can sit in pose for hours, you know. So there's and the same as a Tarahumara, their running it's not about cardio. They're having a physical, social and spiritual experience. You know, they're reaching profound states in running, which is kind of what I've started getting to myself and achieving through breath work and the right technique. It enables me to be more relaxed.
Yeah, you know? I love that thought. It's a physical, social, and spiritual experience. And I guess one of the reasons I see running exploding these days is because people are craving that escape from the prison of modern life and modern living. And I think running is a very accessible way, or people perceive it to be a very accessible way of getting out there and just feeling free. And that statistic you mentioned really marries up with whenever I do a podcast with a runner. Loads of people love it, but a lot of people will also say, I love that feeling inspired, but I can't run. I've had to give up because of injury. And it really sort of fits.
Yeah.
People are hearing the stuff they want to. And I can tell you my own story on that is that I had 10 years of chronic backache, maybe between the age of something like 21, 22 and 32, 33, something like that. Had time off work, couldn't lift up my kids, had to give up squash, had to give up all the things that I loved doing. And so I never really ran because I couldn't, because when I ran a bit, it would really hurt. And on the journey I went on to try and get to the root cause of my back pain, which took a long time. I found a guy who, I think you know, Gary Ward.
Gary Ward, yeah.
And
What the Foot, huh?
What the Foot book, exactly.
Yeah.
And I've had Gary on the podcast. Gary assessed me, and he, you know, again, I'm overly paraphrasing the complexity of what Gary found, but he said, Rongan, look, your right foot isn't working properly. It's sort of, in many ways, it's gone to sleep, and we need to get your right foot working properly. And when we do, I think that's going to have a significant impact on your back. Okay,
absolutely.
And I would do 5 minutes a day on these exercises he taught me, and instantaneously I could feel my back loosening up. And so I've been through a whole rehab period of that, but I haven't had back pain now for years. I will now lift sofas, tables. I don't have to manage my back pain anymore. I know it's gone. I know, there was a mechanical component. There was also an emotional component.
Yeah, because it got to a chronic phase, right?
Yeah, for sure. And we can always explore that. But the point I wanted to make is that I know what it's like to be injured, not be able to go out and enjoy these things. And since I've started to get in touch with my feet again, right, I now can re-engage in all the activities I want. I can now go and run. And I'm like, wow, I love running. And I never used to because I never could do it. But now I feel the freedom you get from running. You know, obviously we were together at the weekend in Devon when I didn't just run, I did a swim run event for the first time, which again, I've just got this newfound confidence in my body to go, you know what, I feel strong. Yes, I've never been in open water before. Yes, I've never swum those distances before. I've never ran those distances before. But you know what? I kind of trust my body now. So let's just go and see what I'm made of. And so I wanted to share that so people listening to this who think they can't run, there may well be a way back. And I think these ground living postures that you're talking about and relearning how to squat is an important one. There's so much I want to talk about.
Let's go into feet, because we've just been talking about feet. So rewilding the feet is just as equally as important as ground rest positions. And then there's one more, which is hanging for me. So between those three systems, that's how I get people back into running. So not even talk about running, I'll just go through ground rest positions.
So how important are the feet?
Well, they're the base of support, aren't they? For standing, walking, running, lifting, climbing even, balancing. So
it's a bit like, I guess it's a bit like if you think about your car, you would know you would need good tires and good wheels, because without them, it doesn't matter how good the engine is. You know, if you've got lopsided tires or they're not.
Yeah, if your balancing's out or something's out, you feel it immediately in the steering wheel, right? 26 bones, 33 joints, over 100 muscles, tendons, and ligaments in the feet, right? So then there's up to 200,000 receptors in there, feeding information back to your movement brain to make you super efficient and minimize the risk of injury. So going back to that kinetics and kinematics, we're receiving information from the environment through our feet, you know? And that enables your movement brain to make the right calculation. So one might be posture. Yeah, great to have you could work on an amazing posture, but then put a huge amount of rubber underneath you And that dumbs down the information that you receive from the environment. So you no longer get the signal to tell you the areas of your feet you're even standing on. There's specific loading points in the feet as well, which are designed for body weight, and certain areas that are designed more for balance. So we can break the foot down like that as well. So Dudley Morton did a lot of work around that, and looked at specific loading points, again, in the evolution of the human foot. So if you look at the big toe, what we call the great toe, it's like 4 times denser and thicker than all the other toes. So which one would be for load, right? Okay, the big toe, right, makes sense. Then you have the ball of the foot. So Nicholas Romanoff from Poe's method helped identify this ball of the foot. And then also to minimize the amount of weight that we put through the heel. But if you think of it, you want kind of 2/3 of your weight in the front end of your foot and 1/3 behind when you're standing. And if you can tune into that, that's great. If you're wearing a heel behind you, you're messing with that whole situation. But also you're messing with the ankle joint, how it responds to the information it's getting from the base of support. That then means the knee is affected, the hip is affected. So just by having a really solid foundation of the foot with the right signals coming back to the movement brain, we can create ankle mobility. Then we can have knee stability. Then we can have hip mobility. Then we can have pelvic stability. Then we can have thoracic mobility. And then we can have neck scapular stability.
But it all starts with the foot.
All starts with the feet. So we got people intervening with a massive plug word and it come in the gyms, core stability, you've got to work on your core. And I had a Pilates studio, I recognised it. We used to teach people just how to strengthen their core. But what's the point in strengthening someone's core if they don't have any hip mobility or ankle function or thoracic mobility? Because the moment they get off the exercise, they're just as weak. So the idea is to, again, address the way that the feet behave, because that information has a massive impact on how the brain behaves with movement. Well, and again, you minimize the risk of injury and you're more efficient. So from a survival perspective, that's what enables the great running species and movement species of today, is the fact they get the appropriate signals from their environment so they can create the right action within that environment. And if you dumb that down by putting I think it's anything above 4 millimeters between you and the earth, you start to dumb down the information that your brain receives, which is incredible. And that's just that. But then when you start to wear footwear that's narrow in the toe box, it then creates an extra shape. Something else changes within the foot. The big toe drifts over, and you can no longer recognize the big toe, which is 4 times denser and thicker than all the other toes. You can't recognize it as a lever or a pivoting component. Therefore, the foot starts to roll and we gain something new. And when you understand the evolution of the foot, you're growing it's almost like a gorilla toe. That's the bunion, right?
Yeah.
It's growing something else because you've lost perception of where the big toe should be as its main support, leverage, pivoting point, which then enables the ankle to collapse. So we have this prescription that comes in, oh yeah, I've got flat feet. Well, actually, you don't have flat feet. You just have a collapsed ankle and your big toe's off. So let's rewild the feet. So I just go through a series of exercises for feet, which helps enable the feet to get back into the appropriate shape for you to create the appropriate amazing postures that should be developed above it.
So for people who are listening to this, who think that could be affecting them, are you saying that in every case or in many cases, all is not lost? Even if you have spent 35 years in soled shoes and you're getting injuries and your feet are flat and you've been told you have to wear an insole, are you saying there is still hope? Your body can still adapt and you can get a lot of it back? Absolutely.
I'm going to use an example. I talk about this guy a lot. It probably drives him nuts, but he's now 78. His name is Yehudi Gordon. So he was a pioneer of the active birthing movement, so natural birthing. He almost rewilded childbirth, right? So he came to me when he was 72, 6 years ago, and he said, I love to learn how to walk. And I was like, what, your 72-year-old wants to learn how to walk, right? It's interesting. Okay, so let's hop up on the treadmill. And then on the treadmill, I can then record the guy from a side profile, not from the front, not from the behind. And that's the podiatry trick. If I record someone from behind and I haven't addressed their posture, they're going to be loading areas of the feet they're not designed to, because the head position alone, how much does the head weigh?
I can't remember, but
it's about 5.5 kilos, right? It's a huge weight. When you actually give someone 5.5 kilos, it's like, oh my God, this is huge. And the further forward it goes, the further forward you stride. The further forward you stride, the more you supinate naturally. And then the more you over-pronate. So you over-supinate and over-pronate because the head position's forward. So don't go recording people from behind, or don't record yourself from behind. Record from the side. And then you can see where the head position is in relation to the hip. So I want to be able to draw a plumb line, head, chest, hip, and then the foot underneath almost. And you watch, if the head position's forward, the foot just goes way out, more forward and forward and forward. So for this guy, 72, he was crumpled up, stooped, and again, massive strike, foot going way forward, huge supination, pronation. Okay, so let's have a look. So then we went through rewilding feet, ground living, so ground resting positions for a 72-year-old, went all the way through it, through kneeling, started off culturing in the kneel first, then single leg kneeling, then double leg kneeling, and then eventually got to the squat. And he's now squatting, so he sets his timer for 30 minutes a day, incrementally, 5 minutes here, 6 minutes there, whatever, and builds his 30 minutes, like the Ido Portal squat challenge, right? And then he can build 30 minutes a day, and then it builds into a new habit. He then, straight away, it was footwear. Footwear had to go out, right? I need you in Vivo barefoot, right? We're all familiar with Vivo, right?
Yeah, everyone knows on this podcast.
Exactly.
I'm a huge fan.
And we're on the big Vivo event this weekend. And so straight away, it's Vivos for him. So he now wears Vivos the whole time, doesn't own another pair of shoes. From ground rest positions, we went into hanging. And hanging then, through hanging positions, because you have to understand that we're talking about sapiens, which is 270,000 years, let's say. But underneath it all, we're arboreal as well. So we've got practices that go way back. So if you believe in evolution, there's that 35 million years somewhere. If you climb down the phylogenetic tree, you understand that we had amazing brachiating abilities. We were hanging, swinging, climbing. So when you start to incorporate those again, it enables you to get back to the wrist, the elbow, and the shoulder and scapular components of, well, we have that in us. We're brachiating apes, just the same. We still have the same capabilities. We have the amnesia again. And then that enables the rib cage to lift. And when I get the rib cage up, I can do all the stretching I like for the thoracic spine. I've done it with people for years and years and years. Only when I started to use hanging, it was like, wow, okay, now they're getting the strength to hold it there. This isn't about the flexibility. Everyone bangs on about flexibility, but you need flexibility and strength. And that kind of comes in with mobility and strength and conditioning. So I could then strength conditioning this guy, Yehudi's posture through hanging, doing active arches, and then into bent arm strength. He's now physically much stronger. Through that process, that 72-year-old has now climbed Everest Base Camp, Bhutan, Mount Kenya. Yeah, he's just. Oh, wow. So his morning looks like, and I've done a whole natural lifestyle number on him. So he sleeps in an air purified room, has his office set up with a bar so he can walk through, hang on the bar. He has a mat that he can squat on to kneel, and then he does his meditation, does his breath work. Asks the cards in the morning, gets the tarot cards out, and then he has a standing desk that he operates at, squats and stands, does an amazing smoothie of probiotic, prebiotic, symbiotics, and then walks down to the tube in his Vivos. People say, would you like a seat? And he goes, no. And he hangs on the bar above, and he hangs while the tube's moving. The tube stops, the door's open, he squats. Then he does a bit of breath work, you understand? So he's basically become, at the age of 78, an opportunist. So he's finding ways of living again that are enabling him as a 78-year-old to thrive. And when he meets people that have known him for years and years, they're like, wow, man, what's going on? You look amazing. And it's because he carries himself better, he sleeps better, physically he's just a better being, you know? So he's removing what I would say, again, going back into suffering. So if we look at even just the rest positions again, you think about it, if movement is one of those things that if you remove movement, you get human suffering. If we're all sitting for 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, we're suffering for 8 to 10 hours a day, you know? You know, if your feet are in a shoe that's compromising, and as in the environment, the petri dish of the foot is a compromising shoe. Cells behave in two ways. Bruce Lipton, right? You have growth and you have protection, right? So let's say we fill our petri dish up with nature, right? So we're going to have a natural footbed for the foot to behave how it should do. We're going to put ground rest positions in there. We're going to put the appropriate amount of sleep in there, lighting, everything else that feeds that dish. You're going to get a growth promoting state. If I go into a petri dish and I say, right, here's a pair of compromising shoes, here's a chair, here's really bright lighting, here's some inflammatory food groups, I'm going to get protection, you know?
So do we need to redefine the petri dish in modern life? Is that the problem? We're saying that the environment determines our behavior, right? So if that is your environment, you work in an office for 8 hours a day, right? Yeah. You have to commute and sit down, let's say you drive to work, right? You know, how much difference is this stuff going to make when you have to live in that environment? And I guess the follow-on question to that is, what if someone's listening to this and go, Tony, that sounds great, what you're doing, what your 72-year-old buddy has done, but well, that's just too much to me. Has the train already left the station? Has culture moved on? Why are these things still relevant? And what would you say to someone who's listening to this, who's skeptical and says, it's too late, I can't do that into my life?
Well, again, I'd say a 72-year-old dude rocks up at my door and look at what he's doing now. He's a completely empowered being, because underneath it, innately again, we're wild, we're connected, and we're empowered beings, right? It's just something happens along the way. And I have my perception of schooling and stuff like that. But it's never too late. It can't be, because all you do again, you just get the stuff from the petri dish and you just put more growth promoting things in there. But there have to be small steps. Because if you just go, right, okay, here's your, I'm going to put all this stuff, I'm going to put it in there, and it's just too overwhelming. And what happens is then we get an emotional response. And we all know what happens when we get an emotional response. We turn into the first 6 years of our life, right? And then that might mean, oh, I need the 4-year-old sugars, or the 2-year-old something behavior comes in. We operate at the 2-year-old or 4-year-old or 5-year-old or 6-year-old level. So it's never too late, and it's also, you just have to look at the environments differently. And I say try and become more of an opportunist, right? So it can be the tube, right? I can choose to sit, right? But if I have an office environment and my HR department don't like the idea of standing desks, right? And they don't like the idea of you moving around too much. Don't sit on the tube, because you're going to be sitting down for 8 hours, right? That's what you have a choice there. Yeah. And you make a choice between, this is the old self, and this is the compromised old self in this petri dish, and this is me going to return back to my wild, innate, empowered state, right? Because we're born with that naturally. So how do I do that? Right, okay, simple things, right? Can be, okay, here's an opportunity. We're doing a podcast now. I can be sitting or I can be kneeling. I know that kneeling is nourishing the ankle, the knee, and the hip, right?
And guys, for those of you listening on audio, we are recording this on video. You can check it on YouTube or my Facebook page or on Instagram. It's funny you say that, because if I could squat for this entire conversation, I would have.
Exactly.
But I can't yet. Yeah. I'm working towards it. So maybe if we redo this in a couple of years, I might be able to. But I've noticed that you're not sitting on that chair. You're making a choice to nourish your body with vitamin movement in the ways you want to.
And the more you just look at these little uploads, the better you feel. And then the better you feel, you go, okay, I'm going to have a go at this. So you could even say, right, for this month alone, what are the physical needs? So let's look at the physical human needs, right? You have movement, you have sleep, you have rest, you have play, you have food, you have sunlight, you have air, right? Sex, whatever. Right, let me work on one of those a month. Right, let's work on movement this month. Let me work on empowering myself. I'm going to choose to, and it's choose. You choose to do this. I'm going to choose to sit less. Or I have Tuesday. I blog about a Tuesday. Right, it's Tuesday. Morning peeps. It's that wonderful day of the week. It's Tuesday, right? It's the day where you make wonderful choices. Choose wisely, right? We're known as the sapien, means wise. Let's be wise in our choice. So let's say I'm going to choose, I'm going to have a picture in my mind of how I want to be. And I'm going to pick Tuesday to behave like that. I'm going to choose how it is I want to be. And every time you do it, you'll think, oh my God, it feels amazing. And then when it starts to do it, it starts to unravel into every day, every hour. Suddenly you'll look for more nourishing things that are going to help nourish physically, socially, and spiritually to remove your suffering. I did a talk in Santander asset management team, right? So they brought the whole team round. So this is Tony Riddle, and I deliberately wore a suit so people could see it was relatable. I had a man bun then, so you can imagine it would have been, if I wasn't wearing a suit, it'd be like this man bun hippie had rocked up. And I wore my office Vivos, right? Because again, that's not about what you run in, it's about what you live in theory. Yeah. After my talk, I went round to see them all, and I just said, right, these are the things that you can do within this environment. So you can slide your chair out, you can hold your desk, you can squat. You can set a timer. Every 25 minutes, ding, timer goes off, squat at your desk.
How long for?
Just do 3 or 4 squats. Just something to get movement back in.
Okay.
And to go into, like, allow it, again, like we discussed earlier, allow the heel to come up. So you're not looking to be really strict. It's just hold the edge of the table, keep your chest, your head up, and squat down, allowing your heel to come up. Tiny little bounce at the bottom, and then stand up again. And then do that. Maybe 5 reps. And then take a walk from one end of the office to the other. Get back to your desk. Buy something living for your desk. Buy a peace lily. Really simple to look after. You don't have to water. You water them every 14 days, right? You can even go away for 2 weeks on holiday and come back. They're still all right. They might be a bit unhappy with you, but a little bit more till they pick up again. And then the other thing was, right, okay, you're working late. Who's working late? Oh, I'm working late. Like amber glasses. We talked about amber glasses on here, right? So we know that through various studies now that lighting is playing a key factor in suppressing melatonin. We also know that melatonin then has links to it's an antioxidant. Yeah. It plays its role in apoptosis, which is this ability to transfer unhealthy cells into healthy cells, is needed for that. So then we can look at cancer. There's other incredible stuff there where we could say it's Petri dish 1, 2, and 3, but they did a study of night shift workers in a simulated night shift with loads of blue light. They did night shift workers in the same blue light but wearing amber glasses, and they did a sleep study of people in a dark room. They then did their melatonin test in the morning. The first group that was in blue light with no glasses, 0 melatonin, really low levels. Group 2, or let's call group 2 the sleep one, in a dark chamber of sleep, high levels of melatonin, and group 3, still the night shift workers, but in a blue light experiment, but with amber glasses, had the same levels of melatonin as group 2 that were in the dark, you know?
Yeah.
So if you're having to work late, again, you can't expect your whole floor to install circadian lighting. We're getting there. We're not there yet.
Absolutely.
So I would say take the responsibility yourself for your own area. And if you want a growth promoting area at work on your movement, work on the air quality, and work on the lighting. If you're a photographer, I agree it's very difficult to play around with that. So it's not going to happen. And then the other one is just breathing. So things like getting into a parasympathetic state of breath. So you can do a nasal in-breath, so breathing in for, say, 4 seconds through the nose, and then do an out-breath for 8 seconds. If that's too long for you, go to a 3 and 6 rhythm. The key is rhythm here. So you could do box breathing. You could do a 3-3-3-3, inhale, hold, exhale, hold, around a box, and think of a box there. Or just do it, an inhale, double up on the length of the out breath, but it's rhythm, and it needs to be like a 3-minute round of breath that to really drop into what is parasympathetic, which is rest and digest.
So you're saying 3 minutes?
3
minimum.
minutes, to get into that state. And also, if you have kids, this is what we do, because we like to mindfully eat. So we look at, rather than saying grace or something like that, we just go through things like breath work again before dinner time. Because rest and digest means that you're going into digestion. So if you're in the office again, you're about to consume something, build a relationship with the food as well, because you could take that into the natural instance would be foraging. I have a relationship to the environment. I have a relationship to the food, the sensory information. It prepares my enzymes, my whole digestive system. Compare that to a sandwich in a packet. I have no relationship to it, and I wolf it down in seconds. So breath work and just a mindful practice around eating will assist your digestion. And why is that important? Because that's how we get the nutrients or the wealth of that food group to the health, to the cells, I could have the most incredible diet, right? But I could have a really terrible digestion and, I'm not absorbing anything. So the people with a really poor diet but a great digestive system are probably better off,
I think that's such a key point. And a lot of the talks I've given recently, I've said that, I explain the whole stress response, explain that actually we are not designed to eat in that sort of stressed out state. Yet many of us are eating on the go. We're checking our emails at the same time. We're rushing around and eating our healthy lunch in a very suboptimal state. And one thing I've discovered in clinical practice over the last few years is sometimes when people think they are reacting to foods, they might be, of course, but in many cases I found that when I teach them some relaxation techniques before they eat, and they're eating in a much more relaxed state rather than a stressed state, those reactions go away. So the question is, was it the food? Probably not. It was the fact that you were eating in a state where your body is not designed to eat. So
so you can't assimilate, can you, with the food, right?
Yeah. So if we just dive in there a second. So you and your family, you, your wife, and your kids. Obviously, you don't have any chairs at home. And we will go back to that at some point. So I think that's super interesting for people. But I was going to say sitting down then. You are about to consume your evening meal, right? Talk me through that. What happens in the Riddle household at dinner time?
It often depends on how Tallulah is, because she might be on the table at that stage.
How old's Tallulah?
Tallulah's now 3.
So let's put some context here. How old are your kids?
So they're now 9, 7, and 3, and then we have a new baby on the way. Katerine's now 22 weeks.
Congratulations.
Yeah, man.
Fantastic.
Exciting stuff.
Okay, so at the moment, 5 of you sitting around for dinner.
Yeah.
So I'm really keen for people who are listening to this to... Some of what you promote might be perceived as being quite extreme, right? But I don't think it is. I actually think there's so much we can all learn from it. So that's why I'd love to go through like a sample dinner time to see if people can learn something from it and start to apply some of those principles, if not all of them, in their own life.
Yeah, so because we don't sit. So again, we can take sitting into that same model of suffering, which we've covered. So we remove the suffering. So therefore, the organism shouldn't be so stressed anyway, because sitting is stressful for the organism because we're affecting our physiology.
Although,
right?
I'm just going to add there that if you have never squatted before and you're used to your whole life sitting in a chair, if you suddenly go from that to like squatting for your dinner,
of course it's going to be more stressful.
It's going to be more stressful because you're going to be achy.
So just play with it. So there's 100 different rest positions. So the squat is just one. I'm kneeling now, so there's double leg kneeling, single leg, and we can just roll out different rest positions. And you'll often see that. So if you set up like a a hyperlapse of my family, you'd see the kids are just from one position to the next. They're never in a position for too long. So their physiology gets a signal, their mind gets a signal, it's a bit uncomfortable now, I need to move, which doesn't necessarily happen in a chair, right? We can just go off cerebral world for 8 hours, right?
Yeah.
So you often get that signal. So that's what will happen. Then say, for instance, the food is in front of us, we will sit and we will honour the plants and the environment, and we breathe and we just respect the food groups.
What do you do with this breathing?
Again, just a simple 3 second in, 6 seconds out, or 4 seconds in, 8 seconds out. So breathing in through the nose will help you reach the lower lungs as well.
Yeah.
Vasodilation as well, because there's nitric oxide through the nose. So
How long are you doing that for, roughly, before
just
dinner?
just a 3-minute process of just sitting and just concentrating on what we're about to consume.
So I love that, because that actually has real practical take home for someone listening who maybe doesn't feel ready yet for a squat or a rest position.
Yeah, you can sit in a chair and just breathe.
Yeah.
Of course.
So
yeah.
I think that's a very practical take home. You're saying 3 minutes is ideal, really, to really tap
I think
in.
really drop in, because it gives you the rhythm that you need. But also, there's lots of studies around breath, and it seems to be there's certain things like nasal breathing, key factor to parasympathetic breathing. Box breathing works. This doubling up on the out breath, and then there's a period of time that enables you to drop in. Now, sitting, if you are going to sit, I just at least honour posture while you're there. So think about lifting your rib cage, because this is about breathing, right? And the rib cage, obviously, the lungs are sitting underneath there. So you want your lungs to operate their full potential. Start thinking about being more upright and lifting the chest and your rib cage.
As you say that, I actually am changing my position. It's amazing you hear that, and it makes me just sit up a bit more.
And by having a ritual, you see, at dinner time, it just changes things. It gets you back in the body again. And it's about what you're receiving. We're all receiving, aren't we? So I think it's nice just to spend a moment to just have a relationship more with the food that you're about to receive, you know?
Yeah.
And also take time. So I'm mindful of it myself, because I'm ex-military, and it used to be this thing where you just go into, they call it the scoff house, right? I mean, that just gives you an idea. That's the dinner hall. And it's literally that. People just go in and they eat because they have a minimal amount of time. They have to be back out on parade or doing something else. So in basic training, you have this quick turnaround. It's a terrible relationship with food. You're literally just wolfing food down. And it is wolfing, that's the thing. And so for me, I really had to work on that to be a better example for the kids. And then it's about chewing. So chew your food until it becomes a liquid. So the key is, I think I heard, what was it? Chew your liquids and drink your solids. You know, so you're basically chewing your solids till they become a drink.
Yeah.
And yet your smoothies and your juices, chew them so you get the digestive enzymes going again. Otherwise, it's what are you absorbing? You've got this, I've just gone through this. I've just made this incredible smoothie this morning. I've put banana, avocado, pak choy, celery, maca, spirulina, all these things in it, and I just neck it. You know, it's about, again, the relationship between what it is you're putting in your body.
I think it's such a great point. And I've got to say, that's the one I struggle with the most. I think my whole life I've wolfed down foods. The last 6-7 years have been a voyage of discovery for me. I've changed so many aspects of my entire lifestyle, but the one thing I still struggle with is eating fast. And how do I know this? Because I see my son doing exactly the same thing, and it kills me because I know I've modeled this. I know I've modeled this behavior, and that he's just mimicking what he's seen, and I'm trying to get him to slow down, but I'm thinking, well, you know he's not going to do that, because all he sees is you wolf down your food.
He's not listening, he needs to see.
Yeah, but again, look, I used to beat myself up about this, and you know, like you were sort of alluding to right at the start, you know, about personal growth. As I do more work on myself, the more I realize that actually I'm doing the best that I can. There's many great examples I hope that I've set him. That happens to not be one of them. But you know what? We're not perfect. We're all imperfect. And yes, I wish I hadn't conditioned him to do that. But I'm going to try my best to first of all work on myself and then hopefully showcase to him that there's a different way of doing this. My daughter is so good at doing this. She is so mindful when she eats. She always is there for, like, she eats really slowly. She chews everything. And I watch her and I think, wow, you know, she just naturally is doing that, despite her father being a pretty poor example of that. One thing I must say I do, because we can talk about personal choices and behaviors, and I think that's great, and I'm all for empowering people, but that environment we're surrounding ourselves with really determines a lot of our choices. So I love the fact that because you don't have chairs at home, you can't sit in a chair, right? So automatically, you're going to have to find other solutions. My kids rarely watch television. It's just not something that we, in fact, we're thinking of getting rid of the television.
Yeah, we removed ours.
But they do occasionally. But the deal I make with them is, okay, you can watch as long as you're squatting.
Yeah, nice.
So
brilliant.
Yeah, and it works because they're like, okay, Daddy, I will squat when I'm watching. So here's the thing. So one of my mates came around and said, that's a bit harsh, isn't it? I said, mate, that's not harsh at all. They can squat perfectly. My son can drop in a squat. He can sit there for no problem at all. I said, I'm actually not doing anything harmful to him. I'm not punishing him. I think I'm helping him because he's like, gets to do what he wants to do, but he's also squatting there for 20 minutes while he's doing it.
Well, it's the reverse of harmful. I think I sat down with Rich and Rich Roll. So we did a podcast, didn't we? And we were talking about ground living.
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh, your kids are they're going to need therapy when they're older." And I thought, well, actually, it's almost like this. To think about it, it's actually the reverse in a way, because you're basically just their physical, social, spiritual needs again. If you align it more with nature, the less suffering we have, right? So if you get back in the body and you get back in the physical vessel and you become a stronger being, then in theory, emotionally, you're more connected, right? So it's again, I think with television, you bang on there. I think if you want to watch a film and a movie.
Why not squat?
Why not squat? Or not even squatting. Again, there's 100 rest positions. Just choose them and just go. See how many you can do. I quite like that with the kids. Let's see how many of these we can practice. And it's
what I'll often do, and is like this wall here. If we are watching a film as a family, which again is pretty rare, but if we are, I can't maintain a squat without support for a long period of time. So I'll often squat against the wall here. So I've got my heels on the ground, but I'll be watching it against this wall. And it's funny because there's a couple of things to explore here. One is what is a social norm. So Rich Roll says to you, your kids are going to need therapy when they're older, right? And I get that because what they are doing is socially abnormal compared to the current norm.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's not optimum.
Well, it's perceived as social extreme, right? It's a social extreme behaviour in the current in this environment.
Exactly, and this is not the environment in which we as humans have evolved to function optimally, which is one of the fundamental reasons why so many people are struggling with their health these days on many, many levels. I think that the wider point here is how much can people constantly struggle and fight against an environment that is working against them.
Okay, so I think the first stage is to remove struggle and fight and just go with acceptance, right? This is where we're living. So we're an urban species, we're living in an urban environment. So again, what can I do within that environment to empower myself? Some HR departments, they won't allow standing desks, right? And for some people, even just a standing desk alone, it's just as detrimental. You can sit with poor posture or you can stand with poor posture. Yeah. They're both just as bad. So it's just having templates again. And again, there's so much we can do in rather than seeing it as battling. And I think it helps to travel as well and go around. Like we lived in Ibiza for a year, right? And other people are floor culture there. They're ground living, Our kids got to roam around pretty much naked the whole time. It broke my heart coming back into London in a way, because it was like, Dad, is it okay on the heath? Is it okay to take our tops off, or is it okay to do this? And they would just be roaming free in Ibiza. So of course there's a change that occurs culturally wherever we go.
Can I just clarify that point? Did you move to Ibiza so that the way that you and your family choose to live would be easier and more acceptable?
What? In a way, yes, because we were living in Windsor and we had this amazing setup. It was a beautiful place, like little cottages on a green, massive willow tree in the middle, and the kids would just roam. We had the doors open, they just run in and out. And that was incredible because it gave them freedom just the same. We were close to nature, but it was different. The community was different, right? So we were socially extreme because we had no chairs and this and that, and kids weren't eating the same food groups as the other kids, and
that feeling.
And there was no gluten, no sugar, no dairy. We were plant-based, and people were like, oh, "Who are these nutcases? That guy's got a man bun," And so we just said, we knew people in Ibiza, and we'd been going over there a lot, and it was like, okay, this is a great setup for us. There's a good community and good vibe over there. But London reeled me back in, and part of this conversation as well is that London's reeled me back in. I'm working with a developer, and I'm doing like a co-working wellness, well-being, lifestyle build. So it's about bringing as much of that physical, social, spiritual needs into a building as possible so that we can work on changing the template of the office environment.
Love it.
Because it has to be that we look at buildings from a sustainability perspective as well, but just understanding that if you're in charge of a building, it's your build, or you're a developer, we need to be raising our game, because again, we're affecting people's health here. So if we can basically create environments that people go into, and rather than ram wellness down their neck, I don't want to create a space like that. We wanted to create a space where you just go in and you go, oh my God, I feel well in here. This is amazing. So we're creating like gardens that you walk through to get into the building. And then playing with movement and air quality and lighting and all kinds of things to try and get as many physical needs met. But then we want to build a community in there because it's about social needs as well.
Yeah.
And then we know that, and then once you get physical, social, spiritual, it's the spiritual needs then that will come through that, because we're bringing in sound healing and meditation and yin practices rather than high intensity. I want low intensity. There's enough high intensity in the world, so I'm just going to try and get people to understand how to breathe again. So just by, again, it takes time, but it is shifting. There's more and more happening in that space, you know.
It reminds me a lot of the chat I had with Dan Boetner, who's studied all the blue zones.
Oh, the blue zone's amazing.
Yeah, released that episode just a couple of weeks ago. Feedback's just been absolutely incredible, because he has this phrase. He said, in the blue zones, people are not pursuing health. Health ensues from the environments in which they're in.
Yeah, it's a symptom.
Exactly. And it's, if we create those environments that you're trying to do with office space, and, my big passion is how can we do this with schools so that kids from that young age are not shoved in chairs all day, are not losing some of their innate, biomechanical functionalities or whatever. They're not losing that and having to, like at my age, I'm trying to relearn how to squat. You bet your bottom dollar when I was 6, I could squat absolutely fine. Yeah. I'm spending hours, trying to do that. So I do think, changing that environment is important.
I went out to Bedale School, to their Dunanny, which is like the lower years, and amazing space. So you got it's out by Petersfield. It's incredible. It was basically at one stage it was a school that's way ahead of the game, right? And so I arrive and it's a new head. And she contacted me and said, would you like to come out and have a meeting? And so I go out and I arrive, and it's beautiful settings. And we're talking for what must be 2 hours. And I'm looking around and I haven't seen a child yet. And he's got this amazing info. It's a beautiful day. It's so sunny and it's incredible grounds, and they could grow stuff there. So they're in the classroom. And I said, well, the first 7 years of life, let's not ram on the intellectual brain. Let's enable them to just see this amazing environment, become reconnected with nature. Because you and I've had to go through a rewilding process, right? I've had to reconnect and I have to learn how to become empowered, and lovely empowered T-shirts that we all love wearing. But the kids have that, so it's almost our responsibility to create school environments and work environments and home environments that help nurture that,
Yeah.
And that's where it's at for me. It's just about, again, that can happen in the school environment, work environment, or the home environment, and it's out of your hands really if it's the school environment. But that's, if people are listening, it's the schools that need to change. I did a post interview with the Outdoor Journal, and they did like a 4-part series with me. And the last one was about children and education. And I was just, in a way, unfortunately, the system's almost broken, right? Because in 5 to 10 years' time, where are we going to be as a species with tech improving the way it is?
Yeah.
We have to have that conversation of what are we preparing the kids for? And how do we create environments that keep nurturing those innate abilities, right? How do we enable them to understand what their physical, social, spiritual needs are, so that they don't have to sit down and have a podcast like this to understand how to do it, Yeah. But it takes, it's our generation, we have to take on the responsibility to be the change. And it sounds so cliche, this be the change, but it's literally just by your example. And again, don't let that be overwhelming. That might mean anything,
Yeah.
That could be anything. It could be any little small change that you can think of that will make you a better human today, will have an impact in your child's home, the child's environment, what they're observing. Yeah. And it's all about the observations. The observations that you make in those first years become the templates for the rest of your life. So if those observations are being made and they're compromising, they might have to reconnect when they're older. But you know what? I had to reconnect. It's not done me any problem. And part of it's been an incredible journey learning how to reconnect and rewild and become empowered. Right?
I think that's a reassuring thing, because the hardest thing as a parent is to hear, the early years are important. first 6 years of life, that's where all the programming gets laid down. Oh no, what have I done? I'm getting empowered now and my kids are already 9 or 10. You hear this all the time. I feel the same, but the reality is, you know what? It's going to happen. You're not going to be perfect. And actually, if kids have to relearn it when they get older, well, so be it. Then they have to. As you say, you're doing it. I'm in the process of doing that. It's not necessarily all bad. It can be, it's just part of that journey, right?
Yeah, we see it as doom and gloom, but we're living in an amazing time right now, right? I mean, we're going down this path of being information rich and experience poor, but the information's there, right? And then it's up for us to go out and experience it. So we are living in an incredible time. Our parents didn't have what we have now, right?
No.
They didn't have the ability to access what they had. And they were also walking around with like post-traumatic stress disorder from wars and stuff, So we're unraveling all that while we're at it.
Yeah, no, you've given, and there's loads of practical take-homes that you've already offered for people. They're these resting positions that, that a lot of these exist on Tony's Instagram, so you can see them there. If there's any links, I'll definitely link them in the show notes. There's a daily practice of, I think you said a 30-minute squat. Aim to squat for 30 minutes a day.
You don't have to, again, not because again it's overwhelming. Think of it like you set a timer 30 minutes, and every time you get into the squat position, whether that's with a heel support or even holding onto the table, anything that you can do to get into that rest position. Firstly, view what the template is for squatting. Have a look, an image, Google squatting, and resting squatting, and then you accumulate 30 minutes in one day. So you have a 24-hour clock there. You just have to accumulate 30 minutes within it. That might mean a minute. It could mean 30 seconds, whatever's comfortable for now. And then what will happen is they all will stretch that. I've got people squatting for 30 minutes, no problem now, but they started off with a minute, 2 minutes here, 3 minutes here, and it grows and grows and grows until it becomes the new habit. And then you go back to, how you see it's amazing with kids, we were saying. Yeah. They just suddenly drop into a squat and you're like, wow, okay. And then they just get back and they move on and they squat again. You get back to that state because it's innate, right? It's innate rest position.
And then that will by default improve, I'm guessing, your walking gait or your running gait is just automatically going to start to improve.
Yeah, it's a micro element of it. So those macro skills of standing, walking, running, anything you want to, an application that you want to put into the gym, it will enhance it. So I have... a pool of clients, yogis and martial artists that come and see me. They were injured in the knee and in the pelvis, right? So they're trying to put through very ancient disciplines through a modern sedentary posture. So you could even take rewilding back even just to 5,000, 10,000 years ago. We know that we weren't a chair-sitting culture. So that's what I have to do with those guys. It's just getting them back to understanding the ground practices that those masters of those amazing disciplines were performing. That's rewilding. It's still taking them back. It's not going back 200,000 years, but we need the template of 200,000 years to understand, that's what the squat is. That's its origins. And then if I want to put in any yoga practice or any martial art practice, I have to look at where those originated from and what's the difference between that culture and where I'm at now, right? So that's how you heal a knee, basically. The knee's the most, it's incredible. It can cope with like 500 pounds of pressure. It's insane the level of knee injuries I see coming in the door. Once I just get the Rewilding squat back in, they miraculously just unravel and they're healthy again.
You can believe that. The knee's in between the foot and the hip, isn't it? And the knees almost takes the strain of what's going on at the foot or the hip. You sort those out.
Exactly. And then it's better. Happy. And then they go back to their practices. And guess what? Everything gets ramped up. The yoga practice improves and so does the martial art practice. So imagine what that's going to do to just... if you want to take a walk down the shops or, go for a little park run.
I mentioned earlier on that my experience with back pain, and it's incredible for me that as Gary sort of helped me wake up my right foot, as it were, I liked the way that felt. And then when I would go into my shoes, I'd be like, I can't really feel my foot anymore. So the natural progression for me then was to go, well, I sort of want footwear that allows me to feel my foot. And there are a few barefoot brands there that I found, but actually because I'm so tall and I'm a UK size 13, most of them didn't make a UK 13. And that's how I found Vivo Barefoot, actually, is that they made a UK 13 and I bought a pair of shoes, wore them. I thought, God, I feel like myself. I feel like when I'm walking, I can feel my foot moving. And over a couple of years, I started to progress. It was initially, it was my sports shoes, but within 2 years, every single shoe that I wear is a Vivo Barefoot shoe because I love the way that I feel in them. And then what would happen is that I remember once I went to a wedding, right? And I thought, I've got to be smart at a wedding. And I don't really have proper smart Vivos at the time. So I wore some old smart shoes that I had. probably wore them for about 6-7 hours. At the end of the day, my hip was aching. I felt my gait was different as I was walking. And I thought, hold on a minute, Rongan, right? Enough's enough. You know, you've suffered for years. I don't care if it's a wedding or anything else. I am not wearing heel shoes anymore. Got rid of them. And thankfully, I have now got some Vivo smart shoes that I can wear with the suit. But the point is, for me, I'm not doing that because someone told me to do it or someone lectured me to do it. Gary didn't even tell me to do that. I just started to discover for myself, I like feeling my feet. I like feeling them move. So the natural progression for me was to go down that route.
It's this thing about just taking shoes off and actually witnessing that you have feet. I did a workshop for this company called Busy Buttons, like a creative group.
Yeah.
And they coach kids, basically. And they said, would you like to come in and do a rewilding workshop? And I was like, yeah, I'd love to. Okay, so they took them out to Virginia Water. No, Savile Gardens, beautiful park. And so we all sat down in a circle, and I got all the kids around in the circle, and I started taking them through breath work. And I said, right, okay, and I want you to close your eyes, kids, and I want you to tell me what, listen, tune into nature, what you can hear. And one of them went, a lion, I can hear a lion. I was like, okay, right, it's time to move on. Okay, everyone stand up. I just want you to do this. Just take your shoes and socks off. And they were all really alarmed. What? We've got to take it. What? We're standing on the ground. I was like, just trust me on this. Just take your shoes and socks off. And they took their shoes and socks off, and they went off. They were just screaming, running, just like they'd been literally let out of a cage. It was incredible to witness. And the guys, Leo and Luella, who run Busy Buttons, were like, Tony, what are we going to do with the next? I said, we're not just going to just observe them. Just have a look at our amazing work. Look, this is it. It's done. That's all they needed. That's almost how disconnected we are. So simple little things like around the home, definitely just take the shoes off and just experience the carpet at least, you know?
Yeah. No, I love it. Absolutely love it. And again, another great take-home tip for people.
But culturally, it is there, isn't it? It's like we were saying, like you had a sitting culture, it can be a squatting culture, it can be a ground living culture, it can be footwear off culture. Just, again, it's just that they're much more aligned with how it would be in nature.
Yeah, it is incredible. And, you know, it's... I think one of the reasons I resonate with your work so much is I have a tendency to extremes myself. Not with my patients. I'm always quite measured with my patients. When I'm trying to help them, I would say small changes. But with myself, I often go all in. So, for example, I would absolutely love to get rid of all chairs in this house because I know what that will do is, although I find it hard at the start, I will skill up. It will force me to skill up. And in no time at all, within 2 or 3 months, I know that'll be my new norm. And it will mean, yes, maybe I'm sitting on a train or I'm sitting in an office somewhere, but when I'm at home, I will have to get better at that. So here's the problem. I, like many people, I've got a partner. So my wife doesn't share the same viewpoint on this as I do. Yep. In the sense that it's like, yeah, I get it, but it's just a bit weird. And what about when or your parents come over, you know, we need to have chairs for people. I said, yeah, okay, fair enough. Well, maybe we keep some, but maybe our dining table can be low down and we can always squat there. And so I guess what I'm asking, it's a slightly selfish question, I guess, but I'm hoping the listeners will get something
It's loaded.
It's a loaded question. You know, what would you say to people or, you know, to my wife when they're sort of expressing, let's say, a reluctance to go all in on something like this? Have you got any advice?
I mean, you're doing best steps already. I'd get people off the sofa at least, and just, if you're doing a Netflix binge, take it down to the ground. Yeah. And just see that actually, you know, hang on a minute, I'm going to Pilates, I'm going to yoga, I'm going to all these things. Why am I doing it? It's because maybe to help my posture. But the reality is, if you don't sit so much and you put stuff on the ground, you don't necessarily have to go and do those things. Yeah. Again, yoga doesn't exist in nature, right? Neither does Pilates. But they have the most incredible postures. And I think from a parenting point of view, do I want my child to be an amazing upright being? And if I do, I have to basically be the example. So if your partner doesn't agree with it, I'd still be the change myself and be the behaviour, because you can't preach to people anyway. You have to be the light, right? So if I want to be the beacon, this big bright beacon, it's just about behaviour. And we didn't always ground live. It's just the kids got to, I think, 4 and 2, before Tallulah came along, and I could see Lola already. We had trip-trap chairs, right? Now, we'd already had no strollers, we already had slings, no car seats because we weren't driving. We used to carry the kids everywhere. So they had minimal sitting. It was only really when it came to dinner times, let's say, right? And I already could see Lola's posture. It started to go. And again, it's just gravity, right? And that C-shaped primate kicks in. And I was, I just can't believe this is happening, you know? And and partly because she's observed us sitting. Whereas Tallulah, she had no sitting furniture at all. So even when it came to her playing with a doll's house, she was like looking at the high chair like some inanimate object. She had no idea what it was. She could relate to the bed and wardrobes, but she couldn't understand what a chair was. But the difference was with her is that she becomes so strong. I mean, she was not like a child learning to stand. She just stood and she was robust, solid, already climbing at like 12 months, rock climbing. Just the motor skill milestones unraveled a lot earlier.
It's amazing to be able to witness that and see.
For me, it was just profound. There was profundity there. So I think with Lola, I observed it and I said, I'm creating this environment.
Yeah.
So they can't say we don't want chairs. It's my responsibility. So I just said, like, Katerina, I'm done. I just can't see this anymore. These are my reasons. What do you think? And I just laid it down. I just said, look, this is the clients I see. These are the symptoms I see. Why are we putting this on our kids? Why are we injuring them? Because my clients come to see me have injuries due to sitting. I class them as injuries, So there was no excuse.
But it makes sense you saying that. It's not judgmental. You're not having to go at people. You're on one level, the way in which you see the human body, they are injuries. They are human beings in suffering.
And it's integrity for me. I had a practice. In the end, I end up closing my Pilates studio for the very same reason.
Yeah, it's about integrity.
People would come in with the same symptoms, and I can't heal them in the Pilates studio because that's not about that. And they put the same compromising footwear on to get back to their car. So in theory, by the time they got back to the car, they all had exactly the same ones they walked in with. I just give them an hour of movement and therapy rather than movement therapy. And the movement therapy exists actually outside the Pilates studio, outside the physio practice, outside everywhere else. It can happen in the home. It just means... even if you keep your dining room table and chairs, just minimise it. Just go onto the ground, do a Netflix binge in a box set, box set in a shin box sit.
Well, what Netflix can now become, or a family film session can now become a movement session, really, because it's like, okay, if you guys are doing it on, like, say, on a Friday evening after school or on a Saturday, whatever, do it, but do it ground living, and then suddenly you're still having that same, socially normal experience, but actually doing it in a slightly different way, and you're working on feeding your body that natural movement. So it is inspiring.
Yeah, it's like, look, if you eat organic food, right, have organic movement. If you breathe organic air, have organic sleep. That's another way of looking at it. It's understanding that there's the processed version of something and there's the organic version of it.
Yeah, but you're just bringing that to movement, which was a beautiful way of looking at it. Tony, we've been chatting for ages and we haven't still got onto the thing that I was most excited to talk to you about. So, I guess what we've been talking about so far has laid the groundwork quite literally for this.
Yeah, well
done. I didn't plan that. That just came out.
That was a great one, man. Like that.
But you are doing something quite incredible this September, which almost feels like an extension of everything you've already been doing on your social media, with your own life, with your family's lives. You're taking it one step further. Can you explain what you are doing this September?
Yeah, so starting from the 1st of September, I will be running from Land's End to John O'Groats. So it's 30 days, 30 consecutive days of running 30 miles a day, but I'm doing it barefoot.
I just want to clarify that. You're not wearing barefoot shoes to do this.
No, just barefoot.
You are properly barefoot.
Yeah, so butt-naked feet, yeah.
You're going to be naked as well?
Well, there might be moments.
Okay, so this is incredible. Yeah. You're basically running more than a marathon a day for 30 days.
Absolutely, yeah.
Completely barefoot.
Yeah.
There's a whole host of questions I want to ask about this, but why are you doing this?
Well, firstly, I'm tapping into what I feel is the physical. I've reached this physical, social, spiritual pathway really with running. I no longer see it as a physical thing. So it's enabling me to... It's to prove what we can do, what's in our physicality, what's biologically normal again. But also, it's good for me, the human being, to be doing it. It's a good example to show, these are the things we can be doing, in my mind. But also, I'm doing it to raise a platform for sustainability. So I'm interviewing sustainability and environmental experts along the route. So each day, I get to interview somebody different. And the way I see it is that I can do all these amazing things, right? I can go out barefoot running, I can go climb, I can swim, I can jump, I can balance. But really that's creating a platform. And with that platform, is a very important message behind it is going to be for the environment, which goes into this generational amnesia thing. I want to just raise as much awareness for not just the human being, but for the habitat,
Where can people find details of this?
Well, following me on Instagram at The Natural Lifestylist, on my website, tonyriddle.com. And there's a few videos and things and links that we're putting up there.
And you're going to put the whole route online, aren't you?
The route will be up. That's coming up soon. And that means that you can then join at any stage. We've also got Plogolution there involved, so there's going to be litter picking events along the route on weekends for you to kind of join. I get like a Forrest Gumper feel to it then. That'd be amazing.
So are you inviting people to come and join you and run with you?
Absolutely, I'd love that. As I say, it's a social experience, right, as well. So,
but they don't have to be running barefoot?
No, you can just come along and run. I'll also be running, holding a few workshops and tutorials and things like that along the route as well, so you can come in and get a little bit of a tune-up from me. Vivo Barefoot are involved as well. I've got their wagon joining me as well on certain stages, which will then give people like pressure plate examples of where their weight is when they're standing. And we can again get some talks and workshops going to help people and improve people in their running style, but also for things like squats and ground living. Yeah. That will all be in place.
I know we're currently recording this podcast, something like, what are we, 24th of June, something like that now?
I think something
like that. I know the route goes online on the 1st of July, so by the time this podcast goes out, I think the route will be up.
Yes.
I'm certainly going to be looking. I would absolutely love to join you, certainly with my kids if I can, to run part of the distance. But barefoot running across the UK, a lot of people listening to this who are quite foreign to, let's say, everything that you're talking about. Maybe this is like a complete...
Oh my God.
Wake up. My God. I just don't know where to start. Barefoot running. I'm a fan. I run in barefoot shoes. I have done for the last years. I spent a bit of time doing the exercises. I think maybe your exercises that I saw online, also on the Viva Barefoot website, there are a few exercises of, bouncing to a metronome speed of 180 BPM. Yeah. I did a lot of time trying to retrain myself so that I could run in those shoes. And I wouldn't consider not doing anything in those shoes anymore. I love, on a separate note, I love that one of the things I love about that brand is, and for people who think I am not paid to promote Viva Barefoot at all, I would absolutely disclose that as a doctor. I'm a huge fan. That it's really changed my life personally.
Well, they're great for the human, they're great for the environment, man. Yeah. I think that's a really important thing that we can.
But they sort of say barefoot is best, but if you're not barefoot, wear our shoes, which I think is great. And so they're going to help support you, but you're not going to wear their shoes. You're actually going barefoot.
Well, I'll wear their shoes outside the run.
Yeah.
Because again, it's about preserving the feet. So it's almost like don't run in their shoes, live in their shoes,
Yeah, absolutely. People often say barefoot running isn't applicable to the modern living environment because it's all very well for people 2,000 years ago, let's say, but we've got roads and we've got tarmac. What would you say to that?
I trail run barefoot, and trails comprise of mud, impacted mud, grass, more impacted mud, tree roots, boulders, stones, horrible gnarly stones. I will trade tarmac for that any day. In fact, the harder and smoother the surface, the better in a way, because it's like the beginner's model. So for me, I get people running on really smooth, hard surfaces.
So it's easier?
Yeah, because the harder the surface, the more compliant you have to become. So let's say you and I are jumping up and down, and we're jumping up and down on a really hard surface. What gives, the hard surface or us? Us, right? So if you jump up and down on a really rubberized floor, what gives?
The rubber.
The rubber. Right? So then if we understand compliance and stiffness, if I jump up and down on a really hard surface, I become compliant, which means I can start to tap into the amazing tendon structures and elasticity that the body possesses. If I jump up and down on really rubberized stuff, I get really stiff. So all my tendons stiffen. So all the ITB, plantar fasciitis, Achilles tendonitis issues I see come through poor posture and hard surfaces, but with rubber. So you wear rubber underneath your foot, a rubber sole underneath your foot on a hard surface. You become hard above, the floor's hard below, and it's just the shoe that gives. So you lose all the amazing tendon actions that the body possesses.
And I tell you, I remember as a younger GP, I remember seeing problems like this coming in, or plantar fasciitis, and they'd be so frustrating because you'd send them off to physios, they'd often come back, often it wasn't getting rid of the problem, and I felt very limited back then in terms of what I could do, whereas now I look at it completely differently. I see that as a symptom of the way that they're living, the shoes that they're in, the fact that they're not working their feet and their tendons in the way that they're designed to be worked. And, there's a few exercises that Gary taught me that which are very similar to a lot of things that you talk about. It's just it's the same thing really. It's just rewilding, right? Just getting them working back.
Yes, at the same time, look, at the end of it, I'm not suggesting anyone goes out there and just starts running on tarmac immediately. No. You have to learn to break your feet up. So if you've been in a compromising foot shape, like a narrow toe box with rubber underneath it, first of all, the narrow toe box will compress the toes into an unnatural position. But the rubber, remember, makes you more stiff. So you stiffen the foot in that position. I mean, like really stiff arches, stiff shape, and then it's the ankle that collapses because the arch can't soften. So every time your foot hits the floor, it's like the arch does this, ding, and then it goes boing when it comes back up again. When the arch is rigid, it's the ankle goes ding and then over again. So we end up this over-pronated, gnarly ankle experience. So firstly is to, rewild the feet. You know, there's loads of stuff out there. Look for toga. Just Google toga. And
how do you spell that?
T-O-E and then ga, like yoga, but toga. And then Vivo Barefoot, they've got some videos up there. And it would just give you an opportunity to play with the feet. I've got in my first week of my squat tutorial. Here's my sale. My first week of my squat tutorial, you can. The first week is all about rewilding feet. So there's stuff that you can be doing in there. Again, just get the feet out, experience them. Walk around the garden, walk around the home, whatever you can do. Break the feet up first. Vivo Barefoot, we've hit the nail on the head there. It just gives you the protection you need, really, but you still get the feedback. So the point is, it's a wide toe box. It's minimal. There's so many brands out there, but I mean, I've been coaching running and then into barefoot running for a long, long period of time. We started off with the pose method with Nicholas Romanoff. Most of the injuries we saw were knee injuries and lower back from heel striking. Born to Run came out, and then suddenly, bam!
Yeah,
we were just dealing with Achilles problems because people just thought they could take their shoes off and go and run barefoot. They weren't getting it necessarily from being barefoot on hard surfaces. They were getting it because they hadn't changed their running shape.
Yeah, exactly.
So firstly is to just understand there's a specific posture that you have to go into when you run. So I would start to think about keeping your head, your chest, and your pelvis stacked and keep your feet underneath you. Draw a line on the ground and then try and jump on the line on the ground, flat-footed. Ding, 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 ding. Really relaxed, soft in the knees, soft even in the jaw and the shoulders. Wrists floppy, and just try and stay really relaxed and just get a tempo going where you're just bouncing up and down. Don't try and land on your toes or your heels. Try and land flat-footed and just keep that rhythm going. And then that will help you understand that there's a head, chest, and pelvis segment. And then try and move forward as you're doing it. Yeah. And that's running is just a series of single-legged hops. So that's teaching you to run on 2 feet. Then you lift one foot up and you hop on one leg. Then you're running on one leg continuously. And then you do 10 of those, then switch to the other leg. Then you can do 8, 8, 6, 6, 2, 2, and then go, and then you're running.
Are there videos online with this stuff on?
So the squat tutorial's going up. So that will be out. I think we're launching it in August.
Yeah. Guys, I'm going to link to all of this stuff in the show notes. And then the show notes page for this episode is going to be drchatty.com/natural lifestyle. I think that's an appropriate URL to sort of get all this stuff. And Tony's website, everything that he's doing, his social media handles, everything we've spoken about, including some of these videos. I have actually one of your squat online courses. As soon as I saw you talk about it, I went and bought it straight away. I think it's been brilliant.
Yeah.
So I think if people do want extra guidance in how they might start introducing these concepts into their own lifestyle, I think it's a great one. I've got to ask you, on that barefoot running, you mentioned injury before. Yeah. And what about people who are saying, hey, that sounds great, but what about your feet? You know, are you not going to start bleeding? Are you not going to start hitting rocks that are going to mean that you get injured? And obviously you can't guarantee you're not going to get injured, but you feel pretty confident, don't you, that you can expose your body and the soles of your feet to this sort of
terrain.
Yeah, why is that?
So look, we did this. The swim run was on this weekend, right? We arrived late because I was doing the tutorial on Friday. We were filming it, but then we joined on the Sunday. So we did the walk and we did the swim, and so everyone turned up. They had their swimsuits on, their shoes on, and so I turned up in my swimming shorts, right? And so I've done
no shoes.
So I've done cold immersion work. I've done ice baths, and so I've built resilience there. But also, we're born with all the gear. We just have no idea how to use it. So people like Wim Hof has done amazing things for that, right? And it's the same with the feet. That once you expose yourself to nature, again, shoes. It's a modern phenomenon. It's a modern thing, you know. So for 270,000 years, what were we doing? And again, we have this misconception that everything was really soft, but there's bedrock and there's all kinds of stuff that's actually more traumatizing for the feet. So what happens is it's called adaptation again. So the more stresses you put it under, the more we respond again. So my feet they've become like jelly almost. There's like a gel almost like my own jelly pads. I've gone back to being a running animal in a way. And because my posture's where it should be, it means I'm not loading for too long on the ground. In fact, I'm very light, so I often catch people by surprise when I'm out running. Like I'm literally behind them. I say, "Excuse me," and they jump out their skin. Because firstly, I'm nasal.
I don't hear you.
No, I'm nasal breathing, so it's not like I'm, it's all through my nose. So I'm nasal
Is your
breathing.
mouth shut
My
when you
mouth
walk?
shut. Yeah. So I went to the first stage was to tape it up. So I would just literally just breathing and out through the nose. And that just keeps me super relaxed again whilst I'm running. And aerobic, so I'm not going into anaerobic stores. I'm going
to try that,
It's amazing,
I've been working
man.
and I do the park run every Saturday morning with my son, and I watch how he breathes. And I didn't know how I should be breathing, but I sort of, in the stress solution, there's a whole chapter on breathing, and I talk about the benefits of nasal breathing. And I thought, I probably should be just breathing through my nose when I'm running. So I make a real effort to keep everything relaxed in my upper body and try and breathe through my nose. But I think taping up my mouth would probably be a great way of sort of enforcing that.
The other way is you have to taper, you have to come back a bit. So let's say, for instance, originally I would be running, let's say I was doing 10 miles out in training, and not much concentration on nasal breathing, just breathing. I would go in and out, nasal breathing. If I was going uphill, I'd start breathing through the mouth because I was burning off too many stores. So what I found was by taping up, I then went from say 8-minute miles down to 10-minute miles. I thought, wow, okay, it's going to sound ridiculous. What a drop! But then over time, it's just gone back up. I'm now under 8-minute miles, but super relaxed. And
your body's had to adapt to that.
But the recovery's better. So that's pure aerobic running then, and like you just keep pushing the aerobic threshold. So it has an overlap into many things. But as I say, like the feet adapt, they really do, and the feet and the posture and everything else just get stronger and stronger for it. We build more resilience.
It feels like a real evolution of where you started to where you are now. That you're going to do this amazing event in September 2019, incredible. I'm interested to see what might be happening in 2 years or 3 years or 5 years, where you may take this, and I don't know if you even know that at the moment. I don't think we need to
I've got a few ideas, yeah.
Let's do one step at a time.
Yeah.
Tony, I have so enjoyed chatting to you. I genuinely think that the content you're putting out there is going to be so helpful. Yes, I think some people, it might be too much initially to hear it. But I think my hope is that it just sows a seed for people, and at least they start thinking about it and going, wait a minute, yeah, there's something in that. Maybe I'll take my shoes off now when I come home, or maybe I'll think about how much I can squat each day. I very much try and apply the principles I've read you talking about. They really speak to me. I try my best to do that. Again, I've gone off the boil the last few months. I think this is a nice reminder for me to get back into my morning routine of waking up my feet and getting my ankle mobility going. I'd love to finish off with take homes for people. I know we've covered quite a lot, but as a way of summarizing, this podcast is called Feel Better, Live More. I genuinely have seen time and time again when people feel better in themselves, they get more out of their lives. And I think everything you stand for is very much a reflection of that. Can you leave my listeners with some of your very top tips on how they can start introducing these concepts into their life that is actually going to, improve the way that they feel almost instantaneously?
Yeah, I think the first stage is morning rituals are a great one. But literally just the moment your eyes open is to remember that we are innately wild, innately connected and innately empowered. And then I start my day with that. I'd recommend that. And then also gratitude, and just have, thanks for all those amazing beings that walk before us, and just give gratitude to everything around you, your family, your friends, and just people that enable you to do what you do on the daily. Breath. A breath practice. Again, I think learning a breath practice that you can just upload throughout the day I think it's golden, really. I think because we're ramping up the stress a lot of the time, and I find I've had to do a lot on social media recently, and so moments I'm like, okay, I'm going to go back to breath now and take it back to breath.
So would 3 minutes of breathing a day be enough for someone who's never done it? Is that a good thing to start with?
I even think there's someone gave me a great tool at just check in with your breath. Just do that. Just every time you check in with your breath, put a tick in a book.
And what does that mean, check in with your breath?
Every now and then, if you catch yourself, just take an inhale through the nose, out through the mouth. Okay, back to my breath. And then that's it, tick, and then off you go. If you have to go into a stressful situation, a meeting, start cycles of breath before you go in. If you take a stressful phone call or a phone call has been stressful, take it back to the breath. Before eating, take it back to the breath. There's up-regulating, there's down-regulating. So before sleep, again, you want to just down-regulate. So going back into parasympathetic. If it gets to, say, 3 o'clock in the afternoon and you're going through the 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock slump, it's coming in, rather than hit the caffeine, okay, go to breath, but charge the breath this time. So it's more like not almost on the brink of hyperventilation. You're up-regulating. So it'd be more like a...
bit more Wim Hof style.
Bit Wim Hof style, or transformational breath style. Just get more oxygen on board and really up-regulate the system. And that's amazing. So the breath is an amazing tool. And again, movement, just in your everyday life, I think just try and get out to nature and move more. I have this thing about setting timers. Average urbanite spends 90% of their time inside. At least try and get your 10%. Try and set a timer for 2 hours, 24 minutes and try and be outside for 2 hours, 24 minutes. Get to a local park. We're blessed in London, right? London's incredible, right, as an urban experience because 8 million trees, 3,000 parks, right? There's 30,000 allotments and 3 million gardens, right? So really there's enough there. If you go in search of it, you can find it and get out into nature and just... Nature has just the same ability to drop us into that parasympathetic state as breath work.
Yeah, 100%.
That even nature scenes, so, have nature scenes even on your screensaver, just stuff that helps you check in. There's studies that show that just looking at flick books of natural scenes drop people into a parasympathetic state. And then, again, urban settings, sympathetic state. So it's just understanding that. So if I'm in an urban environment, maybe work with the breath to keep you in a parasympathetic state. And then when you get the opportunity in your 10%, get to nature. Sit under a tree, read a book. If you have to answer emails even, just get out into the park. Another nice one is to do your meetings out there. There's a lot said for that. Go and, set up a meeting and say, do you mind if we walk? I even set meetings up at the ponds now. Right? We go to the ponds, have a dip in the water, then get out, and then we're going for a walk and we have a meeting.
Imagine that. I would imagine those meetings are a lot more creative than had that not occurred beforehand.
Oh, it's incredible, It's just people are, again, you'll be a surprise. Once you invite people in, you'll be a surprise what they're open to. Because a lot of time people want this. They want to be able to become more empowered. They want to become more wild and set that amazing macro state of well-being. They want to experience it. Sometimes they don't know how. And if you have the tools, I say, why don't you come with me this weekend or come out for me for a walk in the park, you know? And if you don't have a community, just build one,
Yeah, love it. Tony, so many great tips there. As I always say to people, just try and choose one thing that you heard in this conversation and think, let me just start there. One small thing, start there.
Exactly.
And build up.
There's so much you can be doing. It has to be small steps. Again, if you do too much, it's short-lived because we just get an emotional response to it. So try and steer away from that and just make it nice and calm. Don't look at me too much as an example because you might think I'm socially extreme, but it's taken me a period of time to do what I'm doing. I've done it in small steps.
Yeah.
Like sawing up my furniture is a socially extreme thing that didn't happen overnight. It came through years and years of studying posture, years and years of looking at what are the natural forms, years and years of this to culminate in that one thing of me saying, right, we're ground living now. But that's the small steps that got me there, and that's the journey. And also, don't ignore the journey. It's all one thing. And if you see people around you doing amazing things, understand they've also had a big journey getting there. It hasn't just happened overnight.
I love that, Tony. And I think what you said about watching yourself and don't let that put people off. I hope when you go onto Tony's Instagram, I hope you'll find it inspiring. Maybe not what you are able to do right now, but it just shows you what is possible when you go through this rewilding process. Tony, thank you for coming up today. Really appreciate you spending so much time with me. Good luck in September.
Thanks, man.
Right? I'd love everyone.
Come join me.
Hey, I'd love everyone listening to this to think about checking out the website, seeing where you're going to be, supporting it. Are you going to be posting on Insta stories a lot?
Absolutely. There'll be some live videos going up. There's the interviews will be going up. I've got some people documenting it as well. Vivo, as I say, they're providing a bit of a stage, a bit of a platform through the wagon, and so there's stuff happening around it. There's a lot of hype coming up, so keep your eyes peeled.
Yeah, if there's room, guys, I'll join Tony. Maybe we'll do an Instagram live from one of them as well.
Awesome.
So to let you guys know how it's going. Tony, thank you so much. Good luck with everything.
Man.
I'll see you again soon.
It's been awesome. Boom.